I've always said over the years, there's the right shot. So where the camera is in relationship to the actors is as important as what the actress is doing. And that's why coverage is like the worst thing in the world for me. They're just arbitrary setting the camera and just recording what the actors are doing. I'm always trying to maximize what the actors are doing. You have to watch the actors very carefully. And you can shoot a scene very simply by just seeing how the actors move in a room and just keep the camera, maybe dolly a little to the left or a little to the right. You first have to see what the actor is doing in the scene. And then you've got to sort of figure out the best. When I was at Columbia, my roommate and I used to go down to the Museum of Modern Art and try to pick up girls. Big surprise. You like that painting? I like it too. Would you like to have a cup of coffee? So, that's where the sort of pick up at the museum idea came from. Then you find a location. We wanted to, of course, shoot in the Met, and they wouldn't let us in because they didn't think we were artistic. So I had to go and use the Philadelphia Museum for the interior. Then you have to, and I've told this to my film students too, you've got to walk the location. You've got to, and you should physically shoot every angle you're going to use, because if you can't take a picture of it and it doesn't look right, don't use it. So I, haunt the location, I walk all around it, and then when I finally think that it works for what I want to do, and then you can also shoot video too of having, the actors walk in the different places. I mean, this is something you can, if you are hardworking enough, you can test out everything. Certainly the day of the digital cameras, there's no excuses for having a crummy location. What I find in so much of what I see all the time is like nobody's thinking about what anything looks like. I mean, New York, helicopter shot of New York. Wow, now there's an idea. I mean, I think they did it in the 30s, maybe the 20s. I mean, how many helicopter shots have you seen of Manhattan? Or a car driving up to a house, And also in the beginning of movies where they waste all this time of, coming into the city. You see all the second unit going out there shooting all this, arriving in New York, arriving in Chicago, while the titles go across. I think the audience is, in the beginning of a movie, you're ready for anything. You're all excited. And suddenly you start seeing this terrible travelogue. Drives me crazy.
Who reminded you of yourself, or was it about sort of casting somebody who was the you wish you had been at that age?
Well, we made home movies first, and that's where we found Keith. Then he was such a good actor that when I was writing Dressed to Kill, I practically wrote the part for him. I mean, and of course, he went on to be quite a good director, Keith. It was quite an experience developing him because he was extremely talented.
But did he in some way remind you of yourself at that age? Or you
Well, I don't think it's that. I don't think you think that way. You just, because you're not the best specter on yourself. I think what happens when people make autobiographical films, the problem is they have the least insight into themselves sometimes. And they usually miscast themselves. It's like, why did you use that person? That's nothing like you. And I think you have kind of blind spots about that to some extent.
I want to go back to slashed to death by deranged transvestite killers. So I wonder if you can maybe just talk a little bit about this idea of putting yourself in your movies and maybe your parents in your movies too, and the pitfalls that might come with that when those people are still around to see the movies, and how much your thought goes into that kind of thing.
Well, I even made a more autobiographical movie called Home Movies when I was teaching at Fair Life. And I don't think either of my parents ever, I don't know if they ever saw it, they never said a thing to me about it.
I heard from my parents.
A couple of clips that maybe speak to this issue as well.
Well, the character in Dressed to Kill was, very much me. I'm the guy
Not
that's...
the Michael Caine character.
No. Though, when I think about it,
In some ways, disconnected from what you set out to do. I mean, it's not that you aren't aware of provoking people, but at the same time, it does have a sense of humor. It isn't, it is sexy. And it is cinema. But people were really pissed off at you.
yeah, I mean, in a thriller also, you've got to let the audience laugh occasionally because you're using so much stylization that if you don't give them a place to laugh and release the tension, they're going to start laughing at the movie, which is never a good sign. So, and it's my sense of humor, basically. This is a body double. I look at it now and I really start laughing. Because, the idea is that he is in a pornographic music video that doesn't exist. I made up the score. The song was Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Where are they now?
Yeah, exactly. And I said...
It's a good song, though.
Yeah, it's a good song. And then I got an idea, well, he's trying to be in the porn film, obviously, to meet Holly Body, because she's going to help him solve the crime. So he goes in as an actor. And I thought, well, why don't we have like an MTV-type pornographic video? And this is what we came up with. Unfortunately, MTV never showed it because I guess it was too pornographic.
Well, one of the other things that
Kid drinking beer and cursing, and nobody was laughing at all. And I realized that, that there was something else going on. They were involved in the movie in a different way, and it was not always so funny. It was something else. And I think with Squid, Margot, and Greenberg, I really was working in a lot of ways on some kind of instinct. Obviously, I poured over these things and the scripts and the making of them, but I also had a kind of feeling about these characters in a way I wanted to make it that I wasn't, totally aware of how it was going to come across, or what my expectations about it was going to come across were different in some cases than some people may have reacted to them. But I think that's kind of cool at the same time. I liked that. With Francis, I feel like it's closer, the final product is closer to what I kind of imagined it would be.
Just, shooting, naked people rolling around the bed together. It's not very exciting. You've seen it a billion times. So you have to have a good idea. I think Noah had a very good idea. That's why it worked so well. I don't know what I was thinking.
They're both funny, too.
Well, actually, I guess that's maybe something, also that I think your films have in common. Your films are, more overtly comedies, but we know from experience that they disturb people as well, and especially a movie like Margot the Wedding seems to disturb people a lot. And Brian's films are presented as thrillers or suspense films, but often can be very funny, like Passion, on purpose. Can you kind of maybe both talk about navigating strange tonal waters like that? How do you let the audience know that it's okay to laugh in a thriller, or that it's okay to feel disturbed in a comedy?
I don't know. Well, maybe in some cases how Brian approaches his movies visually. The things that he's known for is the long shots, the split screen. I his movies. There's the museum scene in Dress to Kill, or the scene in the mall in Body Double. I mean, those things like play on in my head. I have them just almost, they're, and there's pieces of those from pretty much all his movies that I have sort of just in there that I'll reflect on at different times, but they're not things that I feel that I can imitate or even would want to imitate, because I don't, the things that I tend to be building in terms of these movies, they wouldn't feel right, I don't think. I mean, but I'd love to if I could. I mean, it'd be great to somehow stumble into a thing and think I could do this in a one take, and with a Steadicam or something would be amazing. Or I could go through the wall and or whatever. But then, I mean, like I saw Passion for the first time yesterday, I guess it was, and it's like when the split screen starts in that movie and that ballet begins, and you have all these characters, the performers in the ballet, and Noomi Rapace's eyes, and Rachel McAdams, they're all like confronting you, they're looking at you, and the music comes in, and it's just like, it's total cinema. And it's something that only Brian can do that way. And I feel just like lifted when I see those things. But it is, as Brian says, I think something that essentially we feel similarly about movies and about movie making, but we come at it in entirely different ways.
Beautiful women.
Well, perhaps, actually, that's a great segue to a couple of clips that we're going to look at, and maybe you can say more, because when we talk about, showing some scenes from, both of your movies, one, I can't remember which one of you proposed it, but you said, why don't we look at 2 sex scenes? And so we're going to look at 2 sex scenes, one from Body Double, a very famous scene, a scene from a film within the film in Body Double. I don't know how many people need Body Double set up for them, but that might be enough to say. And then a sex scene from, a very different kind of sex scene from Greenberg, which is a scene between Ben Stiller and Greta Gerwig, who's playing the personal assistant of the Ben Stiller character's brother, and he's recently relocated to LA and been told that she can provide him with anything he needs. So we'll take a look at those 2 ideas. And
they're more like ideas. They're sort of filmic ideas, and they're not really based on creating a character and then building the story from how the character interacts with the other character. Because when I see a character movie, I see a 2-shot in a restaurant, and I suddenly start getting very sleepy. Because I see that 2-shot, and I see that over the shoulder, and I go, oh God, is this boring? But of course, you need scenes like that in order to build character relationships. I'm very aware of it, but to me, because I think in all these kind of very developed cinematic terms, it's not very challenging to me. The worst thing I can say about a director is he covered the scene. Otherwise, you got the 2 actors there, he shot 27 different shots, and then they put them together in an editing room. Any idiot can do that, So when a director really thinks about how to conceptualize the scene, how to visually, underscore what the emotion and the actors are doing, then I get awake.
Well, and do you know what Brian's films a reference for visual storytelling? Is that something that, as Brian was saying, character storytelling doesn't come as naturally to him, or isn't his primary interest? Did you look to his films for visual ideas, or ways of telling?
Living in the Village?
Yep.
And I live in the Village, so we started hanging out together, and he tried to talk me into being in the movie.
Yeah, I wanted you to play a therapist in the movie. And Ryan said, I've even turned down Woody Allen.
Exactly. I didn't want to make a fool of myself. So you cast Peter Bogdanovich.
Started a long friendship with Peter as well off of that, so you gave me that gift as well. And then we stayed in some touch, but then we were actually just, we didn't see as much of each other, and then a few years later, I arrived in my hotel room in Toronto when The Squid and the Whale was there, and the light was already blinking on my phone, and I picked up the phone and listened to the message, and it was Brian saying he'd seen the movie and liked it, and what was I doing?
Exactly.
And so I think from that point on, we've been inseparable.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I know when we were talking a little bit about this event, you said that you felt that Noah, that you and Brian had a kind of a similar idea of cinema, or that you shared a lot of the same ideas about what movies should be. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit, and just sort of how you come to exchange ideas about movies in the years since those initial meetings?
Well, one thing also, even to back up, which I wanted to say is, because my parents loved Brian's movies and were seriously intellectualized them on top of just enjoying them. I think my mother was very disturbed when she saw Obsession and got very angry at my father. It may have led to their divorce. But they...
And The Squid and the Whale.
Yeah. Yes, and The Squid and the Whale. And me on this stage. But I knew about Brian's movies before I really had seen them, and I knew them as these kind of weird, creepy, sexy things that were somehow, when I would get to be older, I could see. And then when I saw them, I loved them. But I think what's interesting then is, since I've become a filmmaker, I can't intellectualize movies anymore. I feel like I come at it from a much more just either practical or emotional place, and I discovered very quickly, I think probably I even started getting to some analysis that night at the party that Brian just dismissed, but that Brian does not look at his movies that way either, and I think a lot of what we talk about when we get together and talk about movies, our movies or other people's movies, is it's very untheoretical. It's not, we don't come at it from a critical standpoint. It's much more from some other place.